The Anderson family dinner table had always been a battlefield of financial debates, but that night in 2013 was different. That was the night I told them I was selling my car to buy Bitcoin. "You're doing what?" Michael, my older brother, nearly choked on his wine. As the youngest vice president in Morgan Stanley's history, he considered himself the family's financial expert. "Bitcoin," I repeated, maintaining eye contact. "It's trading at $100 right now. I think it could hit $1,000 by year's end." "Alex, sweetheart," my mother intervened, using her talking to a child voice despite me being 25. "Maybe you should listen to your brother. He knows about these things." Michael leaned back in his chair, swirling his expensive wine with the smug confidence of someone who thought he knew everything about money. "Bitcoin is a scam, plain and simple. No institutional investor would touch it. It's magic internet money for gamblers and criminals." Our father, a retired investment banker himself, nodded in agreement. "Son, if you want to invest, I can introduce you to some real opportunities. Proper stocks, bonds, reliable things." I looked around the table at my family, all of them so certain, so convinced of their traditional financial wisdom. Even my sister Sarah, who usually stayed out of these discussions, was shaking her head disapprovingly. "I'm not asking for permission," I said quietly. "I'm telling you what I'm doing." "With your own money, fine," Michael scoffed. "But don't come crying to us when you lose it all." The next day, I sold my BMW for $45,000 and put every cent into Bitcoin. My family thought I was insane. Michael made sure to remind me at every opportunity how reckless and naive I was being. But I wasn't just buying Bitcoin. I was studying blockchain technology, learning about cryptocurrency trading, and developing what would become next-gen crypto exchange. While my family saw only magic internet money, I saw the future of finance. Working from my small apartment, I spent 18 hours a day coding, learning, building. My first version of the exchange was crude, but it worked. I launched it just as Bitcoin hit $1,000, exactly as I predicted. Michael's response: "A lucky guess. It's a bubble that'll burst any day now." By early 2014, my exchange was handling $100,000 in daily transactions. Small by traditional standards, but growing. I added more cryptocurrencies, improved the interface, enhanced security. Then came the call that changed everything. "Alex," David Chen's voice crackled through my phone. "I heard about your exchange from some friends in Silicon Valley. We should talk." David Chen, the legendary tech investor who'd backed some of the biggest names in Silicon Valley. He wanted to meet me. The meeting was set for the same day as our monthly family dinner. I showed up late, still buzzing from my conversation with David. "Sorry I'm late," I said, sliding into my usual seat. "Had an important meeting." "Oh?" My mother perked up. "A job interview? You know, Michael could put in a word at the bank." "Not exactly," I smiled. "A venture capitalist wants to invest in my exchange. $5 million for a 10% stake." The silence that followed was deafening. Michael broke it with a laugh. $5 million? For your little Bitcoin website? Alex, come on. No serious investor would. David Chen. I cut him off. "You know, the guy who backed PayPal and Stripe?" That David Chen. For the first time in my life, I saw my brother speechless. That's impossible," he finally managed. "David Chen doesn't invest in cryptocurrency. He does now." I pulled out my phone and showed them the signed term sheet. "The deal closes next week. My exchange is now valued at $50 million. My father leaned forward, suddenly interested. Son, perhaps we should discuss this. I have some experience with venture capital deals. No need, I interrupted. The lawyers have already reviewed everything. I'm not here to ask for advice. I just thought you should know that your son's magic internet money scam is now worth more than your entire investment portfolio, Dad. The look on their faces, the slow realization that maybe, just maybe, they'd been wrong, was priceless. But it was nothing compared to what was coming. Because what they didn't know was that the David Chen deal was just the beginning. My exchange wasn't just another cryptocurrency platform. It was about to revolutionize how digital assets were traded. And my family, with all their traditional financial wisdom, had no idea what was about to hit them. I left dinner early that night, ignoring Michael's suddenly friendly attempts to discuss potential synergies between my exchange and his bank. In my car, I checked my phone. Bitcoin had just crossed $1,200. My initial $45,000 investment was now worth over $500,000. But more importantly, my exchange was processing over $1 million in daily transactions. Back in my apartment, still the same modest place I'd lived in for years, despite my growing wealth, I opened my laptop and stared at the code for our newest feature. Something that would change everything: institutional-grade trading tools for cryptocurrency. Michael and his banking friends thought crypto was just for retail investors and criminals. They were about to learn how wrong they were. My phone buzzed. A message from David. Alex, the board loved your presentation. We're ready to fast-track the expansion. How soon can you launch the institutional platform? I smiled, thinking about Michael's dismissive comments about magic internet money. 3 months, I typed back, just in time for the next family dinner. As I worked through the night, my mind wandered back to all the family dinners where I'd been lectured about real investing. All the times Michael had talked down to me about financial markets. All the times my father had tried to push me toward a proper banking career. They thought they knew everything about money, but they were about to learn that the future of finance wouldn't be found in their mahogany-paneled boardrooms or traditional trading floors. The future was being built in apartments like mine, by people they dismissed as dreamers and fools. And I was just getting started. 3 months passed in a blur of code, meetings, and sleepless nights. Next-gen crypto exchange wasn't just growing, it was exploding. Our daily trading volume had hit $100 million, and that was before launching the institutional platform. The morning of the next family dinner, I sat in my new office on the 50th floor of a downtown skyscraper, reviewing our latest numbers. Bitcoin had just crossed $5,000, making my initial investment worth over $2 million. But that was pocket change compared to what the exchange was now worth. Mr. Anderson? My assistant Emma poked her head in. Morgan Stanley is on line 3. Again. I smiled, knowing exactly who was calling. Let me guess. My brother? Yes, sir. He's called 4 times this morning. Keep taking messages. I turned back to my screens, watching the trading volume tick up. Michael could wait. He'd been trying to get a meeting for weeks, ever since rumors about our institutional platform started circulating on Wall Street. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, my sister. Mom wants to make sure you're coming to dinner tonight. She says it's important. Of course, it was important. The whole family had suddenly become very interested in my little Bitcoin website since the David Chen investment went public. At exactly 7 p.m., I pulled up to my parents' house in my new Tesla Model S. No more old apartment. I'd finally decided to start living like the billionaire I was becoming. Not that my family knew about that part yet. Alex, my mother rushed to greet me at the door. We were just talking about your, what do you call it? Crypto thing. I stepped into the dining room to find not just my immediate family, but several surprise guests. Uncle Peter from Goldman Sachs, Cousin William from J.P. Morgan, even my father's old partner from his investment banking days. Michael sat at the center of the table, practically bouncing with barely contained excitement. Alex, perfect timing. We were just discussing potential opportunities for collaboration. I took my seat, noting how everyone seemed to be watching me. Were you now? Yes. Uncle Peter leaned forward. Michael tells us your platform is doing quite well. We'd love to hear more about it. I bet they would. What they didn't know was that I just finished a board meeting where we'd reviewed their bank's desperate attempts to get early access to our institutional platform. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone. Why don't I show you? I projected our latest statistics onto the dining room wall using a small portable projector. The numbers spoke for themselves. Daily trading volume, $500 million. Active users, 2 million. Institutional clients waitlist, 400 plus. Platform valuation, $2.8 billion. The room went silent. That's impossible. William stuttered. Those numbers can't be right. They're actually outdated, I replied calmly. This morning's volume crossed $600 million. We're the fastest growing cryptocurrency exchange in history. Michael's face had gone pale. But you never said. You never asked, brother. Too busy telling me how cryptocurrency was a scam, remember? My father cleared his throat. Son, with numbers like these, you must be thinking about taking the company public. I have some contacts at Goldman who cooled. We don't need traditional investment banks, I cut him off. In fact, as of next week, they'll need us. I pulled up another screen. The preview of our institutional trading platform. NextGen Prime launches Monday. It's going to revolutionize how banks and hedge funds trade digital assets. We've already signed partnerships with 3 of the top 5 financial institutions in the world. Which ones? Uncle Peter demanded. I'm afraid that's confidential, but I'm sure your bank CEOs will tell you soon enough. They've been quite enthusiastic in our meetings. The atmosphere in the room shifted. Suddenly, I wasn't little Alex playing with internet money. I was Alexander Anderson, the CEO they'd been desperately trying to meet. Now, I continued, I understand several of your institutions have been trying to schedule meetings about potential partnerships. Nods around the table. Those requests go through our institutional sales team, just like everyone else's. No family shortcuts. Michael stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. We're your family. We have decades of banking experience. You need our expertise. I laughed softly. Need your expertise? Michael, your bank's entire crypto trading desk has less daily volume than what our platform processes in an hour. What exactly could you teach me about this market? But the risks, the regulations, are all being handled by the best teams money can buy. Our compliance department is headed by the former chief of cryptocurrency enforcement at the SEC. Our security team includes top experts from the NSA and Israeli intelligence. And our trading infrastructure. I smiled. Well, let's just say it makes your bank systems look like they're running on Windows 95. My mother, trying to salvage the situation, jumped in. Darling, we're all so proud of your success. We just want to be involved. To help. Like you helped when I started. When I was working 18-hour days building this from scratch, when Michael was telling everyone who would listen that my business was a scam. Silence. I have a meeting with the Central Bank of Singapore tomorrow morning, I said, standing up. They're interested in using our technology to build their national digital currency platform. So if you'll excuse me. Wait, my father called as I reached the door. What? What's the company actually worth now, with all these partnerships and developments? I turned back, making sure to meet Michael's eyes. The latest private funding round valued us at $5.2 billion. My stake is just over 70%. The sound of my brother's wine glass shattering on the floor punctuated my exit perfectly. In my car, I checked my messages. 23 missed calls from various family members' banks. 5 urgent emails from Michael's boss. And 1 message that made me smile. Confirmation that Morgan Stanley CEO wanted to meet. I typed a quick response to my assistant. Schedule the meeting for next week, but make sure Michael is there. I want him to see exactly who he's been calling a fool all these years. As I drove away, I thought about how different things were from that first family dinner when I announced my Bitcoin investment. They'd laughed then, called it fake money, said I was throwing my life away. Now they were practically begging for a piece of what I'd built. But the best part? They still didn't know about our newest development. The one that would make everything we'd done so far look small in comparison. The one I was saving for our next family dinner. The meeting with Morgan Stanley CEO was scheduled for 10 a.m. in our New York headquarters. I made sure Michael would have a front row seat to what was coming. I sat in my office, 52 floors above Manhattan, watching the morning sun glint off neighboring skyscrapers. The wall of screens behind my desk displayed real-time trading data from NextGen's platforms. Over $2 billion in trading volume already. And it wasn't even lunchtime. They're here, Emma announced through the intercom. Send them up. And Emma? Make sure the presentation is ready. The elevator doors opened to reveal Morgan Stanley's entire executive team, led by CEO James Harrison. Michael trailed behind them, trying to look important, but clearly uncomfortable. Alexander. Harrison stepped forward, hand extended. Finally, we meet in person. I gestured to the conference room where the wall-to-wall windows offered a stunning view of the city. Please, make yourselves comfortable. As they took their seats, I noticed Michael's eyes darting around, taking in every detail of our office. The state-of-the-art trading floor, visible through glass walls. The hundreds of employees bustling about. The massive screens showing our global operations. Quite an operation you've built here, Harrison began. Your institutional platform has certainly caught our attention. Yes, I smiled. I believe you've been trying to get a meeting for. How long, Michael? My brother shifted uncomfortably. Alex, 3 months. Harrison cut in. Which is why we're here today. We want to discuss a potential partnership. Morgan Stanley has significant resources that could help expand your platform's reach. I leaned back in my chair. Interesting. And what exactly do you think we need help with? Well, Harrison gestured to his team. We have decades of experience in traditional finance, global infrastructure, regulatory relationships. Let me stop you there. I pressed a button, and the room's screens came to life. Let me show you something we haven't made public yet. The screens displayed a global map with pulsing lines connecting different points. This is NextGen's current network. We process more transactions per second than all major stock exchanges combined. Our security protocols are 3 generations ahead of anything in traditional banking, and our regulatory compliance systems are being studied by central banks as a model for the future. I switched to another screen. But that's not why you're really here, is it? You're here because of this. The screen showed a preview of NextGen's newest platform, introducing NextGen Bridge, the future of global finance. Harrison leaned forward, his eyes widening. Is that a fully integrated platform that bridges traditional finance with digital assets? Real-time settlement, cross-border transactions without intermediaries, complete integration with existing banking systems. I paused for effect. And we've already signed exclusive partnerships with 3 major central banks. Michael stood up so abruptly his chair nearly toppled. That's impossible. The regulatory requirements alone have all been approved. I finished for him. While you were busy calling cryptocurrency a scam, we were revolutionizing the entire financial system. Harrison's face had gone pale. The rumors about Project Phoenix, that was you. I nodded. NextGen Bridge launches next month. We're offering partnership opportunities to a select few institutions. I slid a document across the table. This is our only offer to Morgan Stanley. Harrison grabbed the paper, his hands shaking slightly as he read. His eyes stopped at one particular line. This values your company at $12 billion. I confirmed. And that's just the beginning. Michael looked like he might faint. The brother who had mocked my magic internet money was watching his bank negotiate for scraps from my empire. The terms are non-negotiable, I continued. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, we move on to the next bank on our list. But we need time to conduct due diligence, Michael sputtered. To review the technology. No, you don't. I stood up. Because every minute you spend deciding is a minute your competitors could be signing with us instead. Isn't that right, Mr. Harrison? Harrison was already pulling out his phone. I'll call an emergency board meeting for this afternoon. As the Morgan Stanley team filed out, Harrison paused at the door. Michael never mentioned his brother was building something like this. No, I smiled. He was too busy telling everyone it was a scam. After they left, I sat alone in the conference room, thinking about how far things had come from that first family dinner. My phone buzzed, a message from Sarah. Mom's planning another family dinner next week. Says it's important we all talk about recent developments. I texted back. Perfect timing. I have something to announce. What my family didn't know, what even Morgan Stanley didn't know, was that NextGen Bridge was just the beginning. The real bombshell would come at that dinner. The week passed in a blur of activity. Morgan Stanley signed our partnership agreement within 24 hours. 6 other major banks followed suit. NextGen's valuation jumped to $15 billion. The night of the family dinner arrived. This time, I had my driver take me in the Rolls-Royce. Might as well embrace it fully. The usual suspects were all there, plus a few new additions. More interested family members who had suddenly remembered my existence. Alex. My mother hugged me tightly. We've been reading all about your company in the news. Why didn't you tell us it was so successful? You never asked, Mom. Too busy worrying about my poor life choices, remember? Michael sat in the corner, nursing a drink. He'd been demoted at Morgan Stanley after the partnership negotiations, apparently failing to recognize a revolutionary financial technology being built by your own brother wasn't great for a banking career. My father stood up, champagne glass in hand. I'd like to propose a toast to my son, Alexander, who has proven us all wrong and built something truly remarkable. Actually, I interrupted. I have an announcement to make first. All eyes turned to me. NextGen isn't just launching a new platform. We're going public next month. I paused, letting that sink in. Initial valuation estimates put us at $30 billion. My stake will be worth approximately $21 billion. The room erupted in chaos. Glasses dropped. People started talking all at once. But more importantly, I continued, raising my voice slightly, we're establishing the NextGen Foundation, a $5 billion initiative to fund technology education and entrepreneurship programs. That's wonderful, son, my father managed. Yes, is. And here's the interesting part. It's specifically aimed at funding innovators whose families don't believe in them. People like me, who have to sell their cars to fund their dreams because their own flesh and blood won't even listen. The room fell silent. The Foundation's first program, a scholarship for young entrepreneurs. The qualification essay topic. How did your family discourage your dreams? I stood up, straightening my jacket. Oh, and one more thing. We're launching a financial literacy program teaching people about cryptocurrency and digital assets. I'm naming it after you, Michael. So everyone will remember how the great investment banker couldn't see the future of finance when it was sitting right across his dinner table. Alex, my mother started, surely you understand we were just worried about you. No, Mom. You weren't worried. You were judgmental, controlling, convinced that your way was the only way. I looked around the table. All of you were, and now you're all trying to get a piece of what I built despite you. I walked to the door, then turned back. The NextGen IPO is going to be the biggest in history, and none of you will get a single pre-sale share. Instead, I'm allocating those to young entrepreneurs who, like me, have families that don't believe in them. But we're family, Michael protested weakly. No, I replied. You're just people who share my DNA. Family supports each other. Family believes in each other. Family doesn't mock dreams or call innovation scams. I pulled out my phone and showed them one final screen. NextGen's new headquarters under construction. A 100-story tower that would dominate the city skyline. See that? I pointed to the location. It's being built right across from Morgan Stanley. Every morning, Michael, you'll look out your office window, assuming you still have an office, and see my name on the tallest building in this city. As I left, I heard the chaos erupting behind me, but I didn't look back. In my car, I opened my laptop to check the latest trading volume. $5 billion and counting. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Sarah. They deserved that. And for what it's worth, I always believed in you. I smiled. Maybe one family member got it right. The next morning, I stood in my office, watching the sun rise over the city. The headlines were already rolling in about NextGen's IPO announcement. The financial world was in a frenzy. Emma came in with my morning coffee. Your brother's been calling again. Let me guess. He wants to discuss pre-IPO shares. Actually, she smirked, he wants to know if we're hiring. Apparently, Morgan Stanley is downsizing their traditional trading desk. I laughed. Tell him to apply online, like everyone else. As I looked out at the city, I thought about that first Bitcoin purchase. The car I sold. The dreams they mocked. The future they couldn't see. Sometimes success isn't just about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't in the billions you make. It's in watching those who doubted you realize just how wrong they were. My phone buzzed again. Bitcoin had just hit a new all-time high. I smiled. The future of finance was here. And I owned it. You're fired. 2 words. That's all it took to shatter my world. I sat across from David Bennett, my boss of 7 years, as he delivered the news with clinical detachment. The global financial company I'd devoted my life to was restructuring, and my position as senior investment director was being eliminated. Your severance package will be generous, David continued, not meeting my eyes. 3 months' salary, plus benefits. HR will email you the details. I didn't cry. Emma Harrison doesn't cry, not even when her carefully constructed life starts crumbling around her. Instead, I stood up, smoothed my pencil skirt, and walked out of that glass-walled office with my head held high. The whispers followed me to my desk. Of course they did. In the cutthroat world of Wall Street, news of someone's downfall spreads faster than stock prices during a market crash. I packed my belongings into a single cardboard box. 7 years of 80-hour weeks, missed family events, and sacrificed relationships reduced to a few personal items and a potted plant. My phone buzzed. Speaking of family. Is it true? My sister Victoria's voice dripped with barely concealed glee. Did you really get fired? I shouldn't have been surprised, she already knew. Victoria had always had an uncanny ability to sniff out other people's misfortunes, especially mine. News travels fast, I replied, keeping my voice steady. Oh, Emma, she sighed with mock sympathy. What are you going to do now? You know how Dad feels about failure. Yes, I knew exactly how William Harrison, CEO of Harrison Global Investments, felt about failure. He'd made it clear our entire lives that success was the only acceptable outcome. Second place was just first loser, he'd say. Now his eldest daughter had become exactly that, a loser. I'll figure something out, I said, ending the call before she could respond. But figuring something out proved harder than I expected. The financial crisis had hit the industry hard, and jobs were scarce. My impressive resume suddenly felt worthless as rejection after rejection rolled in. Overqualified, they said. Looking for someone with different experience, they explained. 2 months into my job search, I sat in my father's mahogany-paneled office, swallowing my pride as I asked for help. Absolutely not, he said, not even looking up from his computer. I didn't build Harrison Global by hiring failures. Dad, please. I just need a temporary position until. Until what? He finally looked at me, his steel-gray eyes cold. Until you embarrass this family further. Your sister warned me this would happen. Said you were too ambitious, too reckless with your investments. My stomach churned. Of course, Victoria had been poisoning Dad against me. She'd always resented that I'd climbed higher in the financial world than she had, even if it wasn't at the family company. I wasn't reckless. I defended myself. The market changed. Everyone was caught off guard. Everyone except successful people, he corrected. Everyone except your sister, who wisely stayed within Harrison Global, where I could protect her. Everyone except your brother James, who's about to make partner at his law firm. The comparison stung, as he knew it would. Victoria, the dutiful daughter who'd stayed at Harrison Global, now held the position of vice president. James, the golden boy, was rising through the ranks at one of New York's most prestigious law firms. And me? I'd struck out on my own, determined to make it without the Harrison name, only to crash and burn spectacularly. The annual family gala is next week, Dad continued. I think it's best if you don't attend. We don't need rumors about your situation overshadowing Victoria's promotion announcement. I stood up, my legs shaking slightly. So that's it? I'm just being erased from the family because I lost my job. You erased yourself when you chose to leave Harrison Global. I'm simply acknowledging the reality of your choices. That evening, I sat in my luxury apartment, the one I could no longer afford, surrounded by unpaid bills and rejection letters. My phone buzzed with messages from so-called friends and family members, each one twisting the knife deeper. Heard about your situation. So sad. Always knew you were taking on too much. Should have listened to your father. The final blow came from my mother. Her text message perfectly crafted to sound concerned while delivering maximum damage. Darling, your father's right about the gala. Take some time to sort yourself out. Perhaps consider a less demanding career. Victoria knows someone looking for an executive assistant. I threw my phone across the room, watching with satisfaction as it hit the wall. Executive assistant. To go from senior investment director to fetching coffee and scheduling meetings. That was their solution? A knock at my door startled me from my thoughts. Through the peephole, I saw James, looking uncomfortable in his perfectly tailored suit. What do you want? I asked, opening the door. To help, he said, stepping inside. I talked to some contacts. There's a position opening up at. Let me guess, I cut him off. Something entry-level? Something more suitable for someone who's failed? Emma, be reasonable. Your reputation in the industry is shot. The Harrison name can only protect you if you accept help on our terms. Our terms, not my terms. Never my terms. I don't need protection, I said. I need support. I need my family to stand by me while I figure this out. James ran a hand through his expertly styled hair. That's not how this family works. You know that. We reward success, not. He gestured vaguely at my apartment, where moving boxes were already stacked in corners. This. After he left, I made a decision. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of watching me grovel for scraps of their approval. I'd lost my job, yes, but I hadn't lost my skills, my knowledge, or my determination. I spent the next week liquidating everything I owned. The designer clothes, the art collection, even my prized first edition books. Each sale felt like cutting away a piece of my old life, but also like shedding dead weight. The night of the annual family gala, while the Harrison clan celebrated Victoria's promotion in their mansion on the Upper East Side, I packed a single suitcase with essentials. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Victoria. Just announced my promotion. Wish you could have been here to see it. Though I suppose it's better this way. Less embarrassing for everyone. Attached was a photo of her with Dad, both beaming at the camera, champagne glasses raised in celebration. In the background, I could see Mom wiping away proud tears, while James stood nearby, already working the room for new clients. I typed out my response carefully. Congratulations. Enjoy your moment. But remember this night, because I promise you, it won't be the last time you hear my name. Then I blocked their numbers, walked out of my apartment for the last time, and headed for the airport. I had a plan forming, one that would either rebuild my life or destroy it completely. 5 years. That's how long I gave myself to prove them all wrong. I had no idea then that those 5 years would change everything, not just for me, but for the entire Harrison empire. My first stop was London. An old colleague from my investment firm had moved there years ago, starting a small consulting business. Charla had always said I had a standing invitation if I ever wanted to leave New York. I doubted she'd expected me to show up with nothing but a suitcase and a desperate need for a fresh start. But she took me in without question. "The guest room's yours for as long as you need," she said, helping me settle in. "But knowing you, that won't be long." She was right. Within a week, I had transformed her spare room into a makeshift office, walls covered in financial charts and market analyses. Charlotte's consulting business focused on identifying struggling companies with potential for turnaround. It was exactly the kind of work I needed, a chance to prove I could spot value where others saw only failure. "There's something happening in the tech sector," I told Charlotte one evening, surrounded by research papers. "Small companies with revolutionary ideas, but they can't get traditional funding because they're too risky." "Sounds familiar," she smirked, handing me a cup of coffee. I ignored her jab. "The big investment firms are too conservative right now, too scared after the crash. But that means there's an opportunity for someone willing to take calculated risks. Someone like you." I looked up at her, a plan crystallizing in my mind. Someone exactly like me. Over the next few months, I worked harder than I ever had at my old firm. During the day, I helped Charlotte with her consulting clients. At night, I built my own database of promising but overlooked tech companies. I lived on coffee and determination, sleeping only when exhaustion forced me to. Then came the breakthrough. A tiny startup in Manchester had developed an algorithm for predictive market analysis. The technology was revolutionary, but traditional investors wouldn't touch it because the founders were too young, too inexperienced. I saw something different. I saw myself in them. Talented people being underestimated by an industry too set in its ways. "I want to invest," I told Charlotte. She looked at me like I was crazy. "With what money?" "You sold everything you owned." "Not everything." I pulled out the one piece of jewelry I'd kept, a rare blue diamond necklace my grandmother had left me. "This should be worth enough to buy a significant stake in their company." Charlotte's eyes widened. "Emma, that's your emergency fund, your safety net." "No," I said, already researching jewelry assessors in London. "It's my future." The necklace sold for £300,000. I invested every penny in the Manchester startup, becoming their primary advisor in the process. Within 6 months, their algorithm had caught the attention of major financial institutions. Within a year, they were acquired by a leading tech company for £15 million. My stake was worth £3 million. But more valuable than the money was the reputation I built. Other struggling tech companies started reaching out, desperate for someone who understood both finance and innovation. I launched Monarch Enterprises, named after the butterfly that emerges transformed from its chrysalis. Charlotte joined as my partner, bringing her consulting expertise and client network. We moved into proper offices in the City of London, hired a team of analysts, and started building something revolutionary, a company that specialized in finding and nurturing overlooked potential. 3 years after being thrown out of my family's world, I sat in my corner office, reviewing our latest acquisition. Monarch Enterprises had grown beyond anything I'd imagined, with offices in London, Singapore, and Dubai. Our portfolio of companies was worth over $200 million, and we were just getting started. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize with a New York area code. "Ms. Harrison?" A familiar voice said, "This is David Bennett, your former boss at—" I remember. I cut him off coolly. "Right. Well, I'm calling because we need your help. The firm is struggling. The market's changed, and we're looking for innovative solutions. Your work with Monarch Enterprises hasn't gone unnoticed." I savored the irony for a moment before responding. I'm sorry, Mr. Bennett, but Monarch doesn't typically work with companies that lack forward-thinking leadership. Perhaps try an executive recruitment firm instead. I hear they're always looking for good assistants. I hung up, smiling as I remembered his similar dismissal of me years ago. But my satisfaction was short-lived. An email popped up that made my blood run cold. Harrison Global Investimentes Facies Hoa Style Takeover ATEMT. The article detailed how a consortium of investors was attempting to seize control of my father's company, using a combination of market pressure and leaked information about questionable investment practices. I should have felt vindicated. After all, wasn't this exactly the kind of failure my father had accused me of? But something didn't feel right. I knew Harrison Global's weaknesses. I'd grown up studying them. This attack was too precise, too well-informed. Someone on the inside was helping the takeover attempt. Before I could dig deeper, my assistant burst in. Ms. Harrison, you need to see this. She handed me a tablet open to a financial news site. The headline made my heart stop. Monarch Enterprises is revealed as Maestri of Harrison Global DEP. Somehow, without my knowledge, someone had used Monarch's subsidiaries to purchase millions in Harrison Global bonds. Bonds that could now be used to support the hostile takeover. But I hadn't authorized those purchases, which meant Charlotte. I called out, but my office was empty. My partner, my friend, the woman who'd helped me rebuild my life, was nowhere to be found. On my desk, a single envelope had appeared. Inside was a note in Charlotte's handwriting. Sorry, Emma. Victoria's offer was too good to refuse. She says to tell you that family always comes first, even when that family needs to be taught a lesson. I leaned back in my chair, pieces falling into place. Victoria hadn't been content with destroying my place in the family. She wanted to destroy everything I'd built afterward too. But she'd made one crucial mistake. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I'd never deleted. Hello, sister. Victoria answered smoothly. I wondered when you'd figure it out. Call off the takeover, I said quietly. She laughed. Or what? You'll run to Daddy? Oh wait, you can't. You're not welcome in this family anymore, remember? No, I replied, my voice steady. Or I'll show everyone exactly how those Harrison Global bonds ended up in Monarch's portfolio. I'm sure that SEC would be very interested in the paper trail. Silence. You're bluffing, she finally said. But I heard the uncertainty in her voice. Am I? Check your email. I just sent her documents proving every illegal step in her plan. Charlotte might have betrayed me, but she wasn't the only one who knew how to keep records. What do you want? Victoria asked, her smoothness replaced by barely controlled panic. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. I want what I've always wanted, dear sister, a fair chance to prove myself. And thanks to you, I'm about to get it. What do you mean? Check tomorrow's financial news. I think you'll find it very interesting. I hung up, then pressed the intercom. Janet, please prepare the conference room. We're having visitors tomorrow. The entire Harrison Global Board of Directors. My assistant paused. Your family's company? Are you sure? I looked at the photo still hanging on my wall. The one from Victoria's promotion gala 5 years ago. They'd celebrated my downfall that night, convinced I would fade into obscurity. Yes, I said. It's time for a family reunion. To be continued. The morning of the board meeting dawned bright and clear in London. I stood at my office window, watching the city come alive below. In a few hours, my family would walk through those doors, not as the powerful Harrisons they believed themselves to be, but as people desperate for my help. "Ms. Harrison," Janet appeared at my door. "Your brother James is here. He's early." Of course he was. James had always been the diplomatic one, the fixer. They'd sent him ahead to test the waters. I found him pacing in the conference room, his normally perfect appearance slightly disheveled. He stopped when he saw me, and for a moment, we just stared at each other. 5 years had changed us both. "Emma," he said finally, "you look successful. Amazing what being thrown out of the family can do for one's career." I sat at the head of the table, my table, in my company. "Why are you here so early, James?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I remembered from childhood. "To warn you, Victoria, she's not going to make this easy. She's convinced Dad that this whole situation is your fault." I laughed. "Of course she has. Let me guess. I'm orchestrating this hostile takeover as revenge, using poor, innocent Charlotte as my pawn." "Something like that." He sat down, looking tired. "The thing is, Em, I've been looking at the numbers. Harrison Global is in serious trouble, even without this takeover attempt. Victoria's been making risky moves for years, hiding losses, manipulating reports, and you're just now noticing." I interrupted. "The brilliant lawyer, Dad's trusted advisor, and you never thought to check what your sister was doing with the family company." He had the grace to look ashamed. "I trusted her. We all did. After you left." "I didn't leave," I corrected sharply. "I was thrown out. There's a difference." Before he could respond, Janet appeared again. "They're here." The Harrison contingent filed in like an army entering enemy territory. First came my father, still imposing at 65, his white hair and tailored suit projecting authority. Behind him, Victoria, her face a mask of cold hostility. My mother followed, then the board members, all longtime family friends who'd watched me grow up and then watched me fall. "Well," my father said, looking around the impressive conference room with reluctant appreciation, "you've done well for yourself." "No thanks to any of you." I stayed seated, making them come to me. "Please sit. We have a lot to discuss." Victoria remained standing, her hands planted on the table. "We don't have to discuss anything. Call off your takeover attempt, and we'll forget this childish revenge plot." I smiled, pressing a button on my desk. The large screen behind me came to life, displaying financial records, transaction histories, and email correspondence. "You mean like how you forgot to report these losses to the board?" I asked sweetly. "Or how you forgot to mention using company funds for personal investments? Or perhaps how you forgot to disclose your offshore accounts?" The color drained from Victoria's face. Behind her, board members began murmuring, peering more closely at the damning evidence. "That's confidential information," she sputtered. "How did you? Charlotte may have betrayed me." I cut in. "But she's not the only one who knows how to keep records. Did you really think I wouldn't have safeguards in place? That I wouldn't investigate why my own company was suddenly buying Harrison Global bonds?" My father stood up, his face darkening. "What exactly are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything, Dad. I'm stating facts. Victoria has been systematically looting Harrison Global for years. The hostile takeover? She orchestrated it herself, planning to buy back control at a fraction of the cost using her hidden accounts. She just needed a scapegoat. Me. The board erupted in chaos. Victoria tried to speak over the noise, but years of evidence was scrolling across the screen, undeniable in its detail. Enough. My father's voice cut through the commotion. He turned to Victoria, his expression thunderous. Is this true? For the first time in her life, Victoria had no smooth response, no clever manipulation. Daddy, I can explain. Mr. Harrison, one of the board members interrupted. If these allegations are true, we need to take immediate action. The CC will not need to be involved, I said calmly. All eyes turned to me. At least, not if we handle this internally. My father's eyes narrowed. What are you suggesting? I stood up, walking around the table slowly. Monarch Enterprises will purchase a controlling interest in Harrison Global. We'll install new management, restructure the debt, and implement proper oversight. The company will survive. The Harrison name will remain untarnished. And Victoria, I paused, looking at my sister, will resign, effective immediately. You can't do this, Victoria whispered. Actually, I can, and unlike you, I'll do it legally. My father sank into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 65 years. You take control of my company, after all this time? No, Dad, I'm saving your company. There's a difference. I returned to my seat. You have 1 hour to decide. Otherwise, these documents go to the SEC, and the Harrison legacy becomes a cautionary tale in financial ethics. The next hour was the longest of my life. I sat in my private office while the board debated, watching London traffic flow beneath my window. James came in briefly. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I'm sorry. For 5 years ago, for not seeing what Victoria was doing, for everything. I nodded but didn't respond. Some wounds take more than words to heal. Finally, my father entered. He looked smaller somehow, less like the titan who dominated my childhood, and more like an old man who just discovered his world wasn't what he thought. The board has approved your proposal, he said stiffly. Victoria has resigned. We'll announce the restructuring tomorrow. I turned to face him. And he met my eyes, and for the first time, I saw something new there, respect. And I was wrong. About you. About everything. Yes, I said simply. You were. He moved to leave, then paused. That night, at the gala, when we celebrated Victoria's promotion, you said we'd hear your name again. I did. I didn't believe you then. I couldn't imagine. He gestured around my office, taking in everything I'd built. I couldn't imagine you proving me wrong so spectacularly. After he left, I sat alone in my office, emotions warring inside me. I'd won. I'd proven them all wrong. The prodigal daughter had returned in triumph, just like I'd promised. But victory felt different than I'd imagined. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. My mother stood there, looking uncertain. The caterers want to know about Sunday dinner, she said. I'd blinked, confused. What? Family dinner. We've missed so many. She twisted her hands together. I thought maybe, if you're not too busy. I looked at her, really looked at her. She'd aged these past 5 years. Worry lines etched deeper around her eyes. How much had she known about Victoria's schemes? How much had she worried about the daughter she'd helped cast out? I'll have to check my schedule, I said finally. But maybe. She nodded, understanding this was as much as I could offer right now. change wouldn't happen overnight. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. 1 month later, I sat in what had once been my father's office at Harrison Global. The view of New York was exactly as I remembered, but everything else had changed. Victoria had fled to the Cayman Islands, where she lived off whatever funds she'd managed to hide. James had returned to his law practice, but now he called regularly, rebuilding our relationship one conversation at a time. My father had stepped down as CEO, taking an advisory role instead. We met weekly to discuss business, our conversations slowly expanding to include more personal matters. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. Monarch Enterprises continued to grow, its reputation only enhanced by the skillful handling of the Harrison Global situation. Charlotte's betrayal had hurt, but it had also taught me valuable lessons about trust and vigilance. My assistant, still Janet, who'd followed me from London, brought in the morning papers. The headlines spoke of Harrison Global's remarkable turnaround, praising the mysterious Emma Harrison's business acumen. But it was the small envelope sitting on top that caught my attention. Inside was an invitation to the annual family gala, being held next month. At the bottom, in my father's handwriting, "This time, you're not just invited, you're the guest of honor." I smiled, remembering that night 5 years ago, when I had walked away with nothing but a suitcase and a promise to prove them wrong. I'd done more than that. I'd proven myself right. I picked up my phone and dialed my mother's number. "About Sunday dinner," I said when she answered. "I'll be there." Sometimes I've learned, success isn't just about proving others wrong. Sometimes it's about being strong enough to let them admit they were wrong, and wise enough to know when to build bridges instead of burning them. I looked out at the city skyline, thinking about the scared, angry woman who'd left New York 5 years ago. She'd wanted revenge. But what I'd found instead was something far more valuable: redemption, not just for myself, but for my whole family. The Harrison name would continue, but under new leadership and with new values. The empire hadn't fallen. It had been reborn, stronger and wiser than before. And me? I was no longer the daughter who'd failed, the sister who'd been cast out. I was Emma Harrison, CEO of Monarch Enterprises and Harrison Global, the woman who'd lost everything and built something better from the ashes. The prodigal daughter had returned, not to beg for scraps from her family's table, but to rebuild the entire house. And this time, I'd make sure it was built to last.